the story, and we will move forward into the story.
Next chapter.
I was, yes, I was thinking about this, the way Sil is doing and sharing this story. Like once a week, he just go through the story and then we read it. And then after that, the whole week, we just go and discuss a lot of other things also, not only the story.
Mm.
And I was thinking that, okay, what are the pros and cons of doing this? For me, whenever you do something like this and you know that it is going to come next week, subconsciously our minds always stay connected with that cueing, with that alert that it is going to happen. And it's a very profound mechanism to stay connected into that mood. Not of course consciously, but as we know that it is going to come, at least I can say about myself, continuously stay connected to that it is going to come and it's going to happen. It's the power of routine also, not habit, because habits are automatic operations. But this thing is like something which keeps you connected to what is going to happen next, and of course what will come. Uh, it's not about incidents and the happenings in the story, but in totality, the abstract connectivity with the story, which is very, very interesting for me. And then throughout the whole week, if I go and observe all those things again that what we have been discussing, I personally feel that everything was connected to the story. And we are actually giving time to like, okay, first the story and then let it sink in, throughout the week and resolve those questions. By resolving, I mean maybe sometimes I don't have any question, like obvious questions, but something which needs more detail, something which doesn't
Integrating.
make activity with my own life, my way of being. And then we discuss something which seemed like, oh, it has nothing to do with the story, but it does have something to do with the story because everything is connected. And this is how I guess that new nobles get trained to be new nobles. I think they get this thing. They learn how to stay connected with what they are choosing. Staying in connection and stay connected with your deliberate choices is so profound. And this is, I think that, okay, I don't know, because I cannot say this thing about myself. I feel it's not about that, okay, I'm trying to minimize and trying to sound humble and all that, but I feel I do have a lot of things to work on before even thinking about that, okay, I need to be a new novel, because that gruffness, that abruptness, which I'm working on, for me personally, it is, no, this cannot be. But I do have that. Once I get irritated, once I get stress, that abruptness just comes in. It's not about that I feel, oh, I was stressed. Why I became stressed? Why I get irritated? That is a question for me. So I need to remedy it beforehand. Preemptive. Be preemptive. And this is what I was not practicing. That's why I'm saying I need to work a lot before even thinking about this. So for me, it's in general, but this is personally, I feel maybe this is how these new novels we are reading the story about, this is how they get trained to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going on in their life, doing everything, mundane life, and connecting and doing all sort of stuff, interacting with other people, but still something is continuously connected to the bigger picture, what they really want to be. And this is how they get this focus in totality to the nobility, to the moreness. I
Yes.
guess that this is what it is. And I'm going to focus on that because it is working for me. I don't know about others, of course, but for me, it is working. And I'm taking it in this way, that just a simple routine, that yes, throughout the story, okay, this throughout the week we are going to do this. But as the weeks are passing and I'm getting the value out of it, that's why I'm more keen and having more trust in this process.
Mm,
I
mm,
like
mm.
this way of continuous
Yeah.
reminders of that
Yes.
something is coming.
Yes. Justin has joined in comments. Hello, Justin. Hello. Welcome. I'm glad you're here, Justin. Wonderful. Justin says, can you say what you just said another way? It was beautiful, but can you reiterate? And then he says, the examples work, never mind. But I'd like to hear it again anyway.
Okay.
We
What
we
I'm
we
saying
like
is,
we like reiteration and saying things in different ways,
okay,
Justin.
I will try my best.
It's
And
part
thank
of
you so much. Yes, and
our
thank you so much
philosophy.
for
Yeah.
asking this, because while I was sharing, it is not prepared. It is something it just came organically. That's why I need to work more on the articulation, and I try to do this by taking subtle, tiny little minute pause in between when I'm trying to share what I'm thinking about, what I'm feeling. And this is what I'm practicing. So, okay, it's again an opportunity. What I'm trying to say is that I have observed that new nobles have this ability that they can extract value out of anything and everything. And even things which doesn't make any sense, that okay, what's big into this, what's valuable into this, even those situations, even those circumstances can be profound learning opportunity for them, and they continuously learn and grow from all these things. They don't look for any holy scripture will come for and tell them the divine secret to be new nobles. Nothing. They learn, they do things right now in this world by doing all those things which are normal, mundane, day-to-day life things and routines. So for me, when SL is decided to share this story in the pattern that, okay, on Sunday, I'm going to read the story and we will just listen. And throughout the week, we will come live and Sil will discuss and do practice the capital R reading of the
We'll all
story. And of
discuss.
course, we all will
All of
do.
us.
Yes, and we all will do this. And this is what the main intent. But of course, as appropriate, capital A appropriateness, whatever comes, and then of course give us support this opportunity, whatever is coming, discuss, share, and try to understand more about it. So the whole week is about like coming a lot of different subjects, completely different to each other, which on surface might not have any connectivity to the story. This is what is happening right now. And so since many weeks now, what I was saying that I was thinking about this routine that, okay, yes, we read the story just once a week, and then throughout the week we are doing other things, almost always doing other things and discussing other
Yeah.
things. Then how this is going to be valuable? And then I realized that this connectivity, this reminder in my mind that Sunday, the Sil is going to read this story again, because for me the story is very interesting and very powerful. So when I have this constant reminder in my subconscious mind that yes, something is going to come, it never goes away because it's in my subconscious, at the back of my mind always. So it
Yeah.
never goes away. And everything, whatever we are discussing, I always see that in the picture or in the context of new nobles and mourners.
Yes.
That's how I'm getting value from this routine. The routine is
Yes.
very simple: once a week, reading a story throughout the week, just discuss whatever is coming. But how I'm getting value, this is what I'm trying to share. That sometimes when we set our intents to extract value, we can get value, moreness out of anything and everything.
Mm, mm.
And this is what is happening for me. I'm just
Yeah.
paying attention to. For me, it's a big deal when someone is coming and sharing with such openness, sharing with such generosity, like really opening up doors wide open, just come and
Yes.
do. And this is something really, really, really a big opportunity for me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
learning every single day,
Yeah.
every single moment I'm learning. Of course, I have this opportunity. You guys might have some other opportunities, but universe always provide us opportunity. but it works. Any opportunity can be an opportunity only for those who prompt and stay and keep the connection alive with that opportunity. Otherwise, every opportunity can be just a lost story or something. Oh yeah,
Oh,
something happened in my past. For me, being there, prompting, responding to that opportunity, this is a big deal in life. And this is a skill I'm learning. Of course, I do have that, but also I'm learning and I'm trying to make it more and more and more skill and sharpen that skill to see the opportunity, to acknowledge the opportunity, to grab the opportunity, to appreciate the opportunity, and to stay connected in that opportunity.
will you read Justin's comments, please, Bina?
I can. I'm going to now
Please,
because I'm not there.
please, please. I'm just taking care of something here.
Okay.
Our intent with these lives is not the usual intent or goals. Our intent is simply to share and do what we do every day anyway, but to just do it via the lives. And the intent is not to have followers or likes. If those come, they're nice. We enjoy them. We appreciate them. If those join, it's wonderful. Like you, Justin, it's a real bonus. But it's not our intent. Our intent, and it's going to be touched on in this chapter, our intent is sharing, 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 sharing. Capital S, sharing. The moreness that comes from sharing. Whether or not there is someone on the other side, it doesn't matter. When we share, and sometimes we do this on our own even, at least within the context of Way of Impeccability and the story and everything. And we can make a post, for instance, that is a sharing, and whether or not anybody reads it doesn't matter. Because we are making it and we essentially sharing it with ourselves and the universe, we get to hear, capital H, hear ourselves. And this is a magical, magical, magical thing. It's very, very, very powerful to hear ourselves. And when we, of course, when others are now sharing and as well, and there's a collaboration in the sharing, we build something that's greater than the parts, much greater. 1+1 = more. And this is what we do in here, right? Sharing, sharing, sharing. Are you
Yes.
reading Justin's comments?
Yes, I'm reading and somehow it jumps up and then I don't see that the last one, but I'm
Are you not seeing it? Ina? Ina? All right,
yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
can you read them from where we last
No,
read?
it's still not showing for me.
Oh,
That's why I
oh.
was yes.
Staying connected is so important. I think hearing it another way will help others digest. Yes, Justin, we it's part of our practice and part of the in the story also. I mean, we consider ourselves to be aspirants, but in for the new nobility, saying things in different ways is a part of the culture. It's an oral culture, even though they live with high technology because it's in the future, but they are deliberately oral because of exactly this reason. When we repeat and we say again, not only does it entrench what we say in to make it usable, because of course their focus is learning and growing. Everything they do centers around learning and growing. So whenever they're sharing something, and then they will do a repeat back or a takeaway, and in that there's repeat, but it's repeat with variation, so that you get all facets of the picture, every angle that you come onto it. It's multiple perspective shifting. So we do that as part of our practice. It's a very deliberate way. And then Justin says, I wouldn't have you say it another way. It was poetic in its first delivery. Yeah, but others may not digest it. So it's helpful to get information to stick with another delivery. Yes. An organic discussion of self through perspective and association. Yes, thank you. Justin says, well done, guys. Thank you. Janet is here. Ah, brilliant.
Oh,
Brilliant. And Janet says,
yes.
thank you for expressing my sentiments so well, Bina. Not your
Wow.
sentiments,
Thank you.
mine.
Exactly.
Thank you for
Exactly.
expressing her sentiments. What a comment. Evolving.
Yes.
Yes. What
Oh,
a
yes.
comment. Evolving.
Yes.
We are exactly. We
Yes.
are in the process of evolving. You just click on her name. Bina, make a comment, please. Justin can
Okay.
he wants to friend you.
Okay.
Let me make mine here too. Of course, I don't know. I think Justin's probably already friends with me, I imagine. Yeah. But if not, feel free. Yeah, we are friends. Yes, good. I
Okay.
thought so.
So
I thought I
we
recognized you.
can move on to the story
Yeah,
now. Yes.
yeah. Yes, we are going to do that in this next moment now. All right. I'm just waiting for Norma to come as well.
Oh, yes. Yes. We are here, Norma, and Ramsey and Cher and Jessica and Cheryl.
Yes,
They're
for yeah,
here.
everyone. Yeah, everyone.
Of course, no pressure to come.
Yeah,
We're just hearing that we are here. That's it.
yeah, yeah. All right. Oh, oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. All right, I shall screen share in a moment.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, Norma is here. Norma is here.
Hello,
Wonderful.
Norma. And
Wonderful.
sorry, hello, Justin. I
Yes.
didn't
Yes.
because I was not aware and I'm not able to see all the comments, by the way.
Oh,
Some
interesting.
were
I wonder
there and
why.
then it jumps out. Yes.
Yeah, that's odd. That's a bit odd. A bit odd. All right, here we
Yes.
go. Screen share. Well, at least I think
Just to
Norma's
give,
here.
if Justin is, okay, if Justin is joining us today, just give a brief idea of what this story is about.
Yes. Yes. The story is the story of the book is called The New Nobles, and it's about a society in the future that revolves around and is focused on nobility. It is the core of their society. Now, nobility not only on its own, because it can't exist in a vacuum. And underneath the nobility and the pursuit of nobility is the pursuit of moreness. Whatever defines moreness, this is capital M moreness. In other words, enhanced awareness, discernment, refinement, exquisiteness, sophistication, understanding everything that involves moreness from a point of evolution, but evolution of spirit, evolution of psyche, evolution of psychology, evolution of awareness. This is their drive. It's a very deep drive. And the entire planet is a school, the school of nobility. It gets mentioned in this chapter again. And everything they do are towards these ends. Every interaction in the society, and there's a lot to the society, and it's part of the agglomeration, and they're an integral part. Is the story has much depth to it. I can't even start to touch on it because it's so deep and so involved. Nonetheless, it's the story of the pursuit of moreness, and we follow a particular character, Biella, and a particular like in all stories, there's a reason why you're following the story. Biella has been charged with escorting a group of delegates to the planet, and the delegates are from worlds that are not yet in the agglomeration, which is the larger grouping of planets, of which Nobelia is a part, and they're a founding member, and they're very integral in it. They're the default diplomatic corps and all sorts of
Well,
things. Yes,
yes, so sorry to interrupt you, but
no problem.
do you have something in your background because it's sound?
Oh, you know what? It's because I have
Yeah.
I had the screen share, remember? And I had it
Oh.
earlier. We were listening to the music. Yeah, thank you for telling me.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we were doing it earlier. We were listening to music. I forgot to turn that off. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, because then it comes directly. At any rate, we are following Biella as she deals with these delegates, because the delegates are from worlds not yet in the agglomeration who are looking to join. And some of these delegates are somewhat unusual. Two in particular, one Camillus, the other Ursula. And we started with Ursula, that Ursula was a bit of a conundrum. And Ursula was, very successful on her world. She's like next in line to be the leader of that world. But she says, at some point, she says, I want to be an aspirant. And she changes. She lets go of everything she has, because she's come to the awareness of the moreness, and that is Biella and the new nobles, and this just blows her away. And she said, this is what I really, really want. At the same time, Camillus recognizes this, and he says, wow, good for you, Ursula. I wish I had the courage to do the same. And we have this profound difference between the two, where they both see the value and recognize the value and want it. But Ursula makes the change to become an aspirant, and Camillus does not. And that tiny, tiny difference is a huge difference. And it's a big theme that's been explored in the previous chapters. And we're still on it because of the reasons why Camillus does not make that decision. It leads to worldview collapse. And this chapter is now, we already saw starting of it, but we're starting to go into the depth of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a paisley shirt on, Norma. I think Norma's in the wrong. I think it's paisley, right? Let me just get Norma the link
Okay.
here.
Yes. For me, this whole story is replaced. Of course, this is what the intent is also. But I'm just saying, in my simple words, this story is providing us the replacement for
Exactly.
what we don't want to be. In this life, this whole life, the problem is mostly we really know, we understand that what we don't want in life, what we really want, because it's unknown, it's new, it's not there, we are not aware of it. And it becomes very difficult to think about what we really want. And sometimes things, our dreams, our understanding is so huge, so larger than life for us, so profound that we kind of like subconsciously believe that it is not going to be possible. It is impossible. It is not going to happen. The story is whatever the philosophy of impeccability and appropriateness and other things are, it just provides us the scenario where these things are being implemented. The philosophies are being implemented, practiced, live on daily basis in every possible way, just to provide us the opportunity to see and imagine things that these are possible, not larger than life, like the woo-woo stuff. These are possible, practical philosophies, which we all can live. We can have that. So the replacement part is so important. And to have this understanding, just an idea that how these things can be, how that world can be, the world of moreness can be for every one of us.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly, exactly. All right, come on, Norma. All right, we'll start. I'll start the reading. Norma will find us. Norma will find us.
Yes.
Yeah, she went to a different, an older one, and seeing that. So we're there. You know what? It is something that I do need to do with this. I need to, that I didn't do yet. I need to pin it to the top, which I didn't do yet. Maybe that's why she's not finding it. Well, let's do that and then we'll get started. There we go, pin to the top. All right. Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. All right, Norma, I'm starting. I'm hoping you're here and you haven't commented yet. All right, here we go. Pursuing Ideals, Chapter 8, Part 1. An acute awareness of our own nincompoopry is a critical ingredient for self-development. From Tools of the Aspirants. Biella slowed her walk considerably as she neared Camillus, watching him closely. While going over the conversation with Ursula, she reviewed the pattern of him, making sure not to miss anything. Recalling something, a discussion with Camillus, she paused. Biella had explained how the new nobility make the effort to find good in everything. She wanted to relate this to something in one of Camillus's fields of expertise. He was a scholar from a classic world. The new nobility were fond of mythology, using it often, both ancient mythology and mythology of their own making. Biella had explained the new nobility's perspective on an ancient myth and its social value. And more so, when we realize the value of the devil, he's there to make us think for ourselves. Then the myth of Lucifer makes more sense. He was the best and the brightest. To the new nobility, there was no fall. Lucifer undertook the most difficult task of all, a despicable task, one which requires the utmost integrity and commitment, for it is odious. That task is the task of sowing doubt and contradiction. The new nobility see doubt and contradiction as essential if we are ever going to rise above the traps of simply believing what we are told. That's probably the root of all evil, or one that causes a lot of it, unless we learn to think for ourselves and develop the capacity to say, no, whole world, you are all wrong in this. We will never get beyond the influence of evil people because it's too easy to manipulate from a position of authority. It's all too easy to be an unquestioning drone. In this scenario, Lucifer is, of course, a fantastic agent of good, doing a dirty but much needed job. It makes a lot more sense to the new nobility within the logic of the grand system. Biella had been struck by his reply. Camillus had said, of all the profound, insightful, and beautiful truths I have heard you elucidate, this probably takes the cake. It's not a simple thing to see what we tussle with and fight against is as important to our success as what we uphold and fight for. In all their interaction, including correspondence before Camillus had come to Nobelia, Camillus had never said anything similar. It was one thing to say, well done, or well said, but to acknowledge profound, insightful, and beautiful truths was another matter entirely. A huge shift in perspective. The new nobility sought to avoid praise and admiration. This they made for complicated relationships, which inevitably included distortion. But significant from Camillus's perspective, a shift for him, making Biella hopeful. She was after that purity of interaction where ego and competitive motivations were absent. Above all, she wanted to break free from the illusion of equality, a complete myth, a necessary myth for society in general, but one to be dispensed with entirely if one was to get to that plateau of honesty the new nobility sought. On that marvelous plateau, no better or worse existed, no higher or lower, and no equality either. Simply the obvious truth of difference. One of the breakthroughs for the early new nobility was cleaning up and refining the philosophy and logic of the mentality of opposites. This flawed conception of the way things worked was insidious and pervasive if unrecognized, leading to severe limitations of thinking and behavior, as it's so influential. The essential mindset of the mentality of opposites was if something is not one thing, then it must be its opposite. So if something is not good, then it must be bad. It could be neutral, But because of the rarity of true neutrality, that option seldom came into play. It's a convenient mindset, makes the world simple, makes the world easy. It allows for clarity and understanding the world in readily graspable terms. But the early new nobles had understood it wasn't their way to perceive the world. If something was not black, it did not automatically make it white, as most automatically tended to think. There were all those other magnificent colors something could be. Obvious, but the obvious is not always obvious in application. An understanding which led them to difference, to glorious, wonderful, delightful difference. The difference of pure being, difference with honesty, difference without evaluation, difference with awareness, difference with acknowledgement, difference with appreciation. That was key. Appreciation. It led to sharing, the joy and wonder of sharing. When sharing of this nature is engaged in, a special magic comes into play. That sharing and magic core to the new nobility. It enabled them to learn from sharing without comparison, without the need to feel obliged, without the need to reciprocate. That magical sharing, a joy to the sharer and the shared. In this magical sharing, that distinction disappears because the sharing is a collaborative process. Each need the other in order for it to happen, and each gain, each enjoy, each are grown and enhanced in the process. The fundamental requirements, earnestness and sincerity, a freedom and fluidity to allow the sharing to lead. Sharing of this nature did not have requirements. Sharing required rigorous honesty. Sharing of this nature did have requirements. Sharing required rigorous honesty and absence of ego and competitiveness in all its forms. Sharing required the absence of obligation, critical, as obligation led to the desire to repay or balance in kind. That's most often not possible. For new nobles, this was solved by developing a true understanding of grand sharing, where both or multiple parties were needed, where the sharing was stimulated and brought forth from intent, from sincere, earnest intent, the origin of the magic. That type of intent caused sharing to come forth that was not ordinarily available, allowing for disparate elements within the sharer to combine, to coalesce, to amalgamate into wholes, into patterns and expressions, which were new and unique, tailored specifically to the there and then of the situation. A delight and joy to the sharer, of immense value, not only in the delight of it, but because it allowed the sharer to see sides and aspects of themselves, of their understanding and perspective of the universe. A magical affair indeed. A large part of what led to the school of nobility, a planet-wide place of no teachers and no classrooms, no teaching at the school of nobility, everything done via sharing, via that pure and noble magical sharing. Biella came back to the present, her thoughts leading her to an appropriate perspective with Camillus. She would love to get to that magical plane of sharing with him. He had so much to offer, as anyone did, but first it needed a complete unhooking and letting go of the comparative mindset, the barrier which needed to be dealt with. That incessant comparison, the complications that arose from it. If equal contribution could not be implemented, it led to a loss of self-worth. Loss of self-worth could lead to attempts to devaluate the contribution received from the contributor so as to balance things that way, leading to all sorts of unnecessary and wasteful complications, which did nothing but interfere, obstruct, and complicate such a waste. Biella sighed internally, knowing she wasn't required to try. No real pressure from the universe for her to try with Camillus. Her desire stemmed purely from her fondness. She would have a gesture with him. To the new nobility, a gesture was a personal appeal to intent, a deliberate placing of energy into a grand chance, a maybe one tried when desire and motivation came in these purely personal ways, a guarantee never promised, and one knew it might not even be a good idea, but one tried anyway, a gift of energy, not to the other person or persons, but to intent, to the universe. A grand gamble. But if successful, the results could be remarkable. It not only usually led to a change in the present, which leads to future change, but it could change the past and affected what had come before in profound ways. What had been banes and detriments in the past could be seen as boons and joys. Remarkable indeed. Biella moved gently and sat beside Camillus. She said nothing, leaving the silence to weave its magic, waiting for the appropriate response from herself. She'd set the intent and was resolved to see it through, as she always was, no matter where it led. One had to be prepared for unusual paths when setting an intent, especially when it involved a gesture. The bench Camillus and Biella were sharing was made from a specially cultivated tree, making an organic bench, a tree bench which looked like a regular bench for the most part, but one with leaves all around it, as if encased by a creeper, except the leaves were on the sitting surface. The part which came into contact with its occupants also special. The special tree's bark, a very thick bark, about the depth of an average hand width, yielding to pressure, shaping to that pressure, making for an extremely comfortable seat. A short stem under the seat providing more than adequate support, although more the top of the large root. From it, many long colored tendrils connected the bench part to the tree. The bench part, trunk and branches. These trees had been cultivated for centuries to get them to this point. The bench or seat part could be moved somewhat, as it was not anchored to the earth itself, only via the tendrils. Other similar benches nearby graced the area. These areas everywhere are Nobelia, part of the comprehensive design and beauty of the planet. Most of the interaction between new nobles occurred outdoors. Rain fell rarely during the day, all part of careful design. The entire system functioning on sharing and interaction. These areas could easily be rearranged to suit various group sizes, almost all under tall trees, which provided a good blend of shade and light. The space between the benches filled with various variations of the foot-kissing moss grass. These weren't just benches, trees, and grass. Almost all decorated in a multitude of ways with flowers and plants, sculptures and art of every kind. Each share spot had a name, just as the gardens did, except the names of the share spots came for the artistic expression of each unique representation of some aspect of nobility. This particular one called deference, an artistic reminder to not let respect and joy turn into deference, as deference led to undesirable hierarchies, and a reminder to respect the nuances of respect. Camillus said nothing, as if there had come a great pause in their connection. A good thing, the pause before a new chapter. End part 1 of Pursuing Ideals.
Oh,
Oh, Norma's here, Norma's here, Norma's here. Oh, hello, magical Norma. Hello, magical Norma. Yeah.
hello, Norma.
Yeah. No, Norma, the comments aren't just for Zoomers. You found the comments. They're there. To find the comments, you have to click on the video, on the live video, and make it like kind of full screen when the comments go to the right-hand side. Then you see when the comments are underneath, then you only see a few. I know it's a peculiarity of Facebook. And comments, please. Comments, please. Justin, I'm keen to hear from you. Norma, I'm keen to hear from you. And whoever else might be here. Whoever else might be here. Yeah. Listening, Bina. I'm listening, Bina.
For me, this chapter is a completely shift of mood. It is different than the other ones. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. The mood, you're saying the mood is different? Oh, yes.
Yes, the mood, overall mood of this whole chapter is different. Different
Yes.
than the previous ones.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
that.
It's a big shift. It's a big shift. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the mood is,
I have
there's
a
some,
question.
uh,
Just
go ahead.
yes, please.
Oh, I just want to say there's almost a melancholy to the mood,
Exactly.
because there's a joy
Exactly.
and a positivity, but it's a soberness that does this and says, well, I feel you, Camelius. I'm not going to share in your stress entirely, right? I can't immerse in that. I have to be cautious, but nonetheless, I appreciate it. And my compassion is activated because I do know and understand the struggle that you're in. It's a big deal. Also, in the previous chapter and somewhat in this chapter, uh, there is a foretelling, as it were, a preemptive understanding of what's about to come. Yes. Now, I explained this before, that, but I'm saying for Justin. Uh, uh, yes, we're going to come back to Ursula. We're going to come back to Ursula very much. No worries. We come back to Ursula. I do miss her too. Uh, in the story, there's this very unusual way this is written, Justin. Ursula, who's a very main character, and a few of the others are created by me, by the author. Yeah, but Camelius, yes, the character Camelius is created by me. However, Camelius is very much based on a real friend. Now, Camelius in the story obviously is a fictional character, but many similarities with my real friend. What is very different is that all of Camelius's dialogue and Biella's responses to him are an actual conversation that took place between me and my friend. As I was writing the book, at that time, I was involved in this whole long conversation with my friend, right? It was, the conversation would start in text when we woke up in the morning and when we'd go to sleep. That was it, right? And I have, I don't know, like a million words worth of this conversation somewhere saved. I saved all of it, and I'll probably publish it as a book one day. It's a very deep, long conversation. And it's very, very amazing when one looks at it as this one long conversation. So much happens in it. At any rate, as I was sharing the writing of the book, I put it into text. And then my friend would respond to it. Yes. And at first he misunderstood a little bit, and he wanted to be, thought I was asking to be part of the writing. I said, no, just respond as yourself. I will enfold it into the story, and I do this. So I take his comments on the story, and I create an environment inside the story which make his comments appropriate. And this requires some skill sometimes, but that's nonetheless the point of it. Yeah, we are seeing, though, what makes this valuable is that we see Camelius's responses to the character, like to Ursula in this case, and to her becoming an aspirant, and to the new nobility. They are the real feelings of my friend, and his psychological development and progression and conflicts are very, very real. Right. So the worldview collapse, the consternation, the conflict that Camelius is experiencing aren't created by me. They could have been, right? I mean, it's one writes characters that do this, but what they really are my friends eternal struggles and conflicts. As I was sharing the story with him, it kind of blew his mind a bit. Yeah. I mean, he's a deep fellow and there's a lot to him, like Cornelius, but there was a moreness that he wasn't quite prepared for. And he struggled with it, right? And we're going to see how this happens and how he responds to Ursula, because he has a very deep response to Ursula. The Cornelius's response, as somebody who's knowing Ursula, is the same as my friend's response to Ursula. It's fascinating. But I want to make the point, though, that I have in the story, before my friend said that, I was writing the story because he didn't, we spoke about other things and came back to this, and I saw where this was going, and I wrote about it as a preemptive point. It's not a story mechanism like what's going to come. I had no way of knowing for sure that my friend would respond this way, but I really did feel that from all the indications. So Biella's perceptions, and also in the story, this kind of foreshadowing, it's not an artificial device of like, you kind of cluing in the reader because you know what's coming. I had no way of knowing for sure this would happen. It was simply an extrapolation of mine, an anticipation, but it did so turn out to be. And it's powerful when you see it in the story. And that's what we're going to explore. Now, today, the reading was very short because it ended there on a new chapter. And next week, we are going to continue with this reading and go into detail and hear from Cornelius and his unraveling and hearing his perspectives and seeing his worldview collapse. Janet says, it seems the difference to be joy as a state of being. Happiness is fleeting. Yes, the difference between joy and happiness, precisely. Precisely. Joy is a deep way of being. It's a deeper connection. It is, to me at least, I'm taking joy in because in Way of Impeccability, there's a particular segment, particular part of it, where it's made very clear the point and purpose of everything is joy. However, we don't want to have joy as just emptiness, which, like happiness, like you said, can be fleeting. Joy as the state of being. Joy founded on sobriety, founded on strategy, founded on thoughtfulness, on perspective shifting, on thinking things through to the end, on honesty, on integrity. Yes, on impeccability, in other words. Joy without that is hollow, and it's hard to accomplish real joy. And joy here taken to be the amalgamation and the entire concept term for all superlatives: bliss, elation, rapture. Yes, there's many more of them, but just for argument's sake, yes, all included in joy. So the superlative of how we can feel being joy as a state of being, absolutely. If we can consistently be joyful, not feel joyful, be joyful. We say to be joyful, but we say yes, I guess we could say to be happy, but it's happiness is more equated with a feeling, as it comes and goes, as you said, fleeting. But joy, definitely, when you acquire joy, not just feel joy, but when you acquire joy, it becomes part of your state of being. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the pursuit for the new nobility. Yes, to have the state of being where they can be joyful, not just feel it, but be it. And this requires totality of everything. Like I said, to have that without the underlying sobriety and impeccability, it becomes hollow and dangerous too. Yes, because if you're in a bubble of joy, it's like when you're on a drug trip, right? You're having fun inside, but you're actually very vulnerable physically in the world. Yes, because you're not aware of things that are going around you. You need to have somebody watching out for you, for instance. Yes. So it's not the ideal state because you're losing your awareness of your connectivity to the world. But when you have true joy, you are taking joy from being in the world or wherever you are, any circumstance, because it's your state of being. Doesn't matter where you are. You could be in jail and you'll have joy if you acquire that state of being. It would make no difference to you. Very powerful point. Very, very powerful point, Janet. Yeah, that's interesting that you pull that from this. That's very perceptive. Very deeply perceptive. Justin, are you still with us? I'm very keen to hear if you are. I'm very keen to hear your comments. Yeah. You might not have been able to stay, but I'm always hopeful. I'm always optimistic. Bina, share. And that mood is very interesting. Sorry, Bina, I know I asked you to share more, but just to finish that point, this was deliberate on my part. I feel that stories, at least in my mind, good stories, the mood are like waves, right? That go up, come down, but not necessarily in a very even rhythm, right? And go like almost like a roller coaster. That you want to take a surge, especially if you've had some intensity. And it's like a wave crashing. What happens after the wave crashes onto the beach? You have it seep back into the ocean, right? You need that
Yes.
seeping of the wave back into the ocean. You need that in a story, because if you just keep crashing the waves, you exhaust the reader. At least for me, I find that, right. And this story I'm writing for me, yes, and it's the only way I feel one really can write. You can write for others, but that's a different kind of a writing, and it's formula writing essentially, right? And it doesn't have that depth to it. But when you want a bit moreness to your writing, you have to write for yourself to get that moreness. Otherwise, because when you're writing for others, you're writing to an aggregate. And every time you write to an aggregate, you make your writing average. It can't be helped. It's just the nature of it, right? But when you want moreness, you can't do that. You can't aggregate. Yes. Anyway, but for me, I feel this, when you have an intensity and then you have that surge again, and then it comes again, and sometimes you have a smaller one, and then it comes a little bitty, and then they build slightly bigger, and then comes build slightly bigger, and then you have the crash and the crescendo again, right? And then you have that withdrawal and retreat, and that sets it up anew again. Otherwise, you're going to have massive fatigue, particularly in a story like this, which there aren't many of, right?
Yes.
It's not a typical story, because the story is the intent of writing the story was I had lots of pressure from the universe to write down my philosophy, right, which I'd spent my whole life cultivating and developing. And in that pressure, I said, if I write out my philosophy in a non-fictional way, you have a treatise or a philosophical work, but it's just all the points of philosophy. Now, I have that elsewhere. I suppose you could say Way-of-Impeccability, the course is that, yes? And the Moreness project, and if you put it all together, capital H hearing, the psychology of the superiority paradigm, if you put those all together, there's this comprehensive philosophy. If you add in nobility now you get a very complete picture. But I felt that that's a little boring. It's hard to not necessarily, I mean, depending on your intent, but I wanted to show it in application, because that's still somewhat theoretical. This story takes that entire comprehensive, cohesive philosophy and applies it. And now you're seeing it in action, right? And we're seeing how this philosophy relates with dealing with someone like Ursula, which is again now dealing with Camillus. Very, very different. And there are others that are going to come into the story. But you're seeing how this is applied. And for instance, the point about the bench, it's part of the deeper psychology. And that even in tiny little things, there's thoughtfulness, there's depth, there's multiple perspective shifting, there's taking things to the end, maximizing, etc. Artistry, beauty, all of that. Simple little part about the bench. But the implications of the psychology that makes for that bench, if you write that out in nonfiction, that's a long, long story. Yes, a lot to write out. But in that implication of this bench made from the tree and how it is, it's like, wow, it's all fine and well to say you want to be an outdoor culture, but if we had to apply that in our world, it'd be very uncomfortable. Wouldn't be feasible. Wouldn't be feasible. Wouldn't be feasible. Yeah. Wow. Brilliant. And so this is the point of the story, at least for me, is I wanted to show it in application. And this is book one of a series. There's many more books to the series, right? I mean, I've already got, well, 2, 3, probably 4, 5. It's all written. I just have to pass it into the different books and that. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Bina, comments? Bina?
Yes, it was. Yes, yes, yes. I was just listening, and what you were sharing about joy and 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 happiness and other thing, and what Janet also said about it was you mentioned that it's a kind of a bit melancholic feeling of
Mm,
this chapter.
mm, mm, mm.
I personally feel, and when you were sharing it is just then the thought came, and I said maybe because we are so accustomed and we are so used to with the chaos.
Mm,
With by chaos I'm saying that a lot of happening distractions and other and thinking so many things, not paying attention to just going random and living life randomly. When we really focus and when we just actually just eliminate other distractions, we feel a bit melancholic into these mood, because it's a sense of like, okay, yes, now this is what the core is, and I was not paying attention to it. So it's a subtle melancholic feeling always when the awareness actually comes in. I personally feel that. And what joy is, I was thinking that when you were sharing, and I was thinking what joy can be. I feel that joy is the optimum peace. If I don't know if I do have another word for that,
Joy is the optimum peace.
because what peace is the absence
Wow,
of
wow,
resistance.
wow,
Uh, Peace is the absence of
wow,
resistance. One of the
wow,
definition for me is, and I again, this is personally mine, could be totally wrong, but this
wow,
is for me right
wow,
now.
wow,
That peace is absence of resistance, and when peace
wow,
more than that, it becomes joy. So for me, joy is the optimum peace, and
wow.
and as Janet was mentioning about this happiness, fleeting, and joy, this fleeting, it needs a lot of chaos before that,
Yeah,
before actually getting there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I added your wonderful quote to the chapter right there before the end.
Ah,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible quote, and that's another thing. You know, this story is a live story. It's an evolving story. It's not closed. See, a good thing. The pause before a new chapter. Joy is optimum peace. Be said. I mean, that's a fine noble quote, right? That's how fine noble would say it, don't you think? But I put it to be said, yeah. Well, I can put it to Bana, actually, rather. Yes, like this. Yeah, I'll do that instead. Yeah, yeah, right, Vina? Vina, you muted. You muted. You muted, Vina. Maybe somebody's come there. Vina has often many unanticipated visits.
yes,
I
yes.
said I attribute it to Bana, to Bina.
Okay, good, good.
See, it's Bina, Bina. Not Bana, Bina.
Yes.
Bina. Yeah, Bina. Yeah. Bana. Can be pronounced Bana, as many different. Joseph says, mood, like all spiritual concepts, has layers of understanding. There's a joy and other temporal feelings, and there's another thing like an understanding. Exactly, exactly. That is connectedness to me and to the new nobles. The connectivity with the world, with the earth, with the universe, part of attunement, because attunement is what they live by. And that deeper connectivity of the flows and rhythms of life in the world and the universe. That's that deep understanding, because it comes from an awareness and a discernment, which leads to understanding. That understanding leads to application, which is attunement. It all works together, but it's a grand connectivity. Absolutely, Joseph. Absolutely. What a wonderful comment. What a wonderful comment. Chaos is a vortex. The center is absolutely still. Yes. Joseph says earlier, oh, I missed a whole bunch of comments here. Oh, sorry. Janet says, the bench has made a strong impression on me. I saw it. I felt it beneath me. Wow. I love this idea of using nature and to be so deeply interactive of nature. It's taking tree hugging to the extreme. Right. I mean, that bark has been, it's got a give to it that you literally could hug that bench like you'd hug a person. There's a little bit of give, right? Because it's like this, there's a sponginess to it. It's like memory foam, essentially. The bark that's around that particular part, right? That makes the sculpted bench. And it's like this big root coming and, that leans out, you know what I mean? And so that's why you can move it as well. It's just very cool. That's very powerful. The bench is a simple thing, but it represents so much by way of implication and intent. The story has rhythm. Yes, exactly, Norma. And that retreat is what I was saying when Bina was saying that this chapter has a different mood and a different feel to it. It's part of the rhythm, absolutely. You can hear it in songs too. You have songs that go, and sometimes they will kind of have a drop, and then they'll shift style and tone, and then they'll come back up again. Yeah, I don't know. I like that. I like the depth and complexity. Joseph says, mood is an interesting concept in application. Yes, absolutely. For example, if my mood is impeccable, I can give each moment and each person who comes into my sphere the attention they deserve. Appropriate attention. Absolutely. Well said, Bina. Joy in your words too, says Norma. Yes. This nuance on mood, feeling, joy, it's absolutely crucial. It underlies everything the new nobility do, because part of Way of Impeccability, one of its core conceptionalities is mood management. The root of impeccability is best use of energy. Well, if you don't understand how to manage your moods, this is one of the most major points of drainage. Therefore, if you want to use your energy to best effect, you absolutely have to know how to manage your moods. Yes. Part of mood management, it goes into association management, etc. There's a lot to it. It all works together. Go ahead, Bina. Go ahead. You have more to share.
Yes. No, I was not saying anything. I was just enjoying you.
I'm enjoying your quote. Joy is optimum peace. What a quote. Capital P, peace. Yeah. Because if you have peace without joy, a lot of people say, oh, I want peace in my life. Peace without joy, sorry, it might not be so fun. Right? Yeah. Has to have joy to it. It's optimum peace, absolutely. Normally we enjoy peace for the absence of negativity. Yeah. But that only lasts for so long. Right? At some point, you're going to have a zero. The zero is valuable because of the absence of negativity. But after a while, that zero is, you stop remembering the negativity so intensely. Zero will be zero. Say again?
Your signals are breaking a bit.
Okay. Go ahead. Share. Will you read Joseph's comment, please? His last one.
Okay. He says, mood like all spiritual concept, this one?
That one and the next one. Yeah.
Okay. Mood, like all spiritual concepts, has layers of understanding. There is like joy and other temporal feelings, and there is another thing like an understanding. Yes.
That connectivity I was talking about. Yeah.
And he says, mood is an interesting concept in application. For example, if my mood is impeccable, I can give each moment and each person who comes into my sphere the attention they deserve.
Exactly. Now read the next comment after the mood one of all spiritual, the fairy world comment. Yeah.
Or elves, if you like.
Yeah, but what's the comment before that? You're missing the comment before that.
My comments are not really aligned. So I'm
I think
missing
you
a
need
lot.
to, I think you need to set the settings for your comments to say,
Okay.
see
Okay.
them
So please,
in order. Joseph
yes,
says,
please.
the fairy world lives in a place where they use nature so naturally in their lives, like the bench in the story, or elves, if you like. Yes, yes, yes,
Okay. Okay.
yes.
I can,
Particularly, yes, exactly, Joseph. Yeah, yeah. It's a big conceptuality, typically, especially of elves, that elves are at least not the Keebler elves, right? Mythical elves, which are the wood creatures, usually tall and all that, and very spiritual and connected. And they live in the forest, and they are part of the forest. And they live in the trees, through the trees, with the trees. It's very integrated. It's a deep spiritual philosophy that underlies typical elf culture. Right. Very, very, very nature connected. Yes, absolutely. And fairies too, but fairies somewhat in mythology, they get a bit of a bad rap, really. But if you go into the fae, in more deeper original mythologies of fairies, right? They're called the fae, either usually spelled Fey, right? And this is a very deep spiritual culture tradition also, going into with druids and all of that, right? Very interconnected. But the main part of it is, as you say, is this deep connectivity to nature. Now, the new nobility make every effort to bring this into their lives as much as possible. I mean, they, for the most part, living outdoors, right? I mean, Nobelia is all of these gardens. It's one massive, great big garden, as it were. And they spend most of their time outdoors. So they can have that connectivity to nature, and it's also an oral culture. So they're always interacting with each other, and they do. It's they not just sit around and talk all the day. They're into outdoor activities, hiking and camping and surfing. They do lots of physical activity as well. Particularly things like say for instance surfing and golf, which, I mean, golf, there's a whole book that Biella has written. It's called Golf with Grace, capital G Grace, Golf with Grace. Because it's not about golf being a competitive, typical sporting activity. No, golf is seen as, for the new nobility, golf is a spiritual activity because golf gives you immediate feedback on your character. Very powerful thing. Same with surfing, right? These are two profound activities for the application of everything that you are talking about and discussing, because key component to impeccability, absolutely key. Without application, it's all meaningless. So the new nobility aren't about theory and discussing things. No, they're about application. Even their discussions in the sharing, they are applying. Listen to Bina's opening comments, where she says that this is off the cuff. It's completely spontaneous what she says. She has no idea what she's going to say, but she's practiced this, and she keeps practicing her ability to express in the moment, to connect to a deeper feeling, to a deeper thought, to express fluidly, smoothly. Yes, Justin said re-express, and she said it poetic. He wasn't saying it because he thought that what she was saying was hard to comprehend. No, he was just saying it because he thought others might not necessarily comprehend it, right? Because she was saying it so sophisticatedly, so poetically. But this is part of the practice of application, that every time we are here, what we are doing is applying and practicing application. Very, very important. Very, very important. Uh, why not include the Alvin people in the story? I'm Joseph, because for a couple of reasons. And in a way, they are in the story. The new nobility takes on the same variation. But what I wanted to do was not make the story too mythological, or too removed from reality. I wanted to be plausible. Yes, it's in the future, but I really wanted to have a society that is still connected to ours with that plausibility. You see? So now if I bring elves into it, it's like, yeah, but those are elves, but we people. Biella is still human. Yes, very much so. And in the story though, some of the delegates, it turns out, well, I don't want to give the story away, but this necessity to maintain this connectivity to who we are is very important. Keep in mind how the story starts. Yes. if you go into it. And now there are aliens that come into it later on because they're in a new galaxy. So I want to go back to the prologue to the story. The whole concept starts with a corporation in our time now that has an idea, and they say, well, it's a marketing idea, but this corporation is a bit of a different corporation. They're a B corporation, a benefit corporation. So their aim is to do more than just make money, right? Some benefit, provide some benefit to society. And such corporations do exist, by the way. It's a very real thing. You can look up B Corps, B corporations. Most corporations are C corporations, which is, that's just, you're all about the money. But a B corporation has in their corporate mandate some point of providing benefit. Now, for the new nobility, their corporate mandate is to just be, or to promote being, the being that Janet spoke of, right? And anyway, this corporation comes up with this idea that in order to have people be aware of them, to raise awareness of the corporation, they're going to start, well, the idea starts off as a competition, but then they say, no, competitions are kind of junk. But the point of it is, they say, we are going to reward anybody who contributes to this idea that we are going to pursue seeding the stars as a realistic pursuit. And anything that you can provide that will contribute to seeding the stars, sending humanity out in the stars to start over again, right? Sending those who we send are going to be our representatives, and we are going to send them out there in order for them to start fresh and avoid all of our mistakes, right? In a new galaxy, so that you can have humanity going on a path that leads to moreness and no wars and, no superiority paradigm and all the other nonsense that we put in. And that's how the story starts. And so it's quite a big involved prologue of what goes into this, and unhooking from the idea of competitiveness, rewarding excellence. There's no one winner, because if you have one winner, the person who comes in second, it's like, weren't they excellent? I look at like Olympic medals, right? I mean, the guy who wins 0.001 second ahead of the second guy, man, the second guy, he swam really fast or ran really fast or whatever, but nobody knows who he is. Anyway, so it's excellence that counts, right? And sometimes you'll see competitions where, somebody gets the gold medal, and, it was a 100-meter sprint and they ran 100 meters in like 20 seconds. I mean, really? That's now you get a medal for this? No, that sucks. That's terrible, I mean, most people can do that. Yeah. You see what I mean? So you have to reward excellence, not winning. And it's part of the psychology. Nonetheless, my point is that now they go out, and then the gods become involved, and they're already gods in the story, but this is now because of a plausible realisticness. You have to read the whole prologue. And this being out in this new galaxy as humanity, but the best of humanity on a different path and a trajectory. This is a very big deal and a very big part of the story. And I'm all attaching this onto your idea of bringing elves into it. But elves can come into it, at least in an abstract form, via other species that are present in this galaxy. It's one of the reasons it was chosen, that other species are there. And it gets very complex in the earlier parts of the story, because when the fleet arrives, this fleet of 1,000 ships, because it's this whole story, this whole project of this corporation, it explodes and takes over the world, and it becomes like the be all and everybody wants in on it. And if you contribute, at first they gave like cash rewards for contributions, but then they ran out of money, even though they were spending a ton of it. And they said, okay, you really contribute, we're going to reward you with a place on the starship. Because at some point it became realistic too. They discovered great gravity engines, which allowed them to do super light travel, and etc. It becomes a big story, but it's about humanity, and also the ideal, or the noble ideal, which can transcend humanity, now going into a new galaxy. And this is like a virus, yes. And they wanted to make sure, and so the fleet gets dispersed, so that it's not all in one place, to test this noble ideal concept, to see if it can survive like on these 1,000 different planets, or 1,000+ planets, so that they wouldn't necessarily be a virus in this new galaxy. It had to be for real, a positive force, not a negative one. But certainly some of the aliens can fulfill the elf conceptuality, and also to show that in the mythological understandings of these cultures, they have limitations, which is very, very interesting. And through this, we can reveal the contrast to say, all right, these are nice cultures, but they bubble cultures, right? They require certain elements, and in that makes them vulnerable. So there's much to explore there by way of contrast. Yes, yes, yeah. Probably too mischievous, Joseph says, says Norma. That's you being mischievous, Norma, but yeah, it certainly can be. And mischievousness is fun. There's lots of mischievousness in the story. In the future, their understanding can be more integrated into our world. Absolutely. And like I said, the new nobility culture has much elf and fairy culture in it, in terms of this appreciation and integration of nature and the respect for it and integration, because they live by attunement. Is this not absolutely the ideal? Yes. Now, of course, attunement is everything, not only nature. That's the limitation of those cultures, is that they stop at nature only. There's more. There's more. There's also science. There's also technology. Everything, right? We can't ignore. We can't ignore. Appropriateness says we have to take everything into consideration. You can't ignore anything. But yeah, so the cooperation with these cultures, this is a fascinating topic to explore, right? And in later stories where these planets become aware, or the agglomeration knows they're there, and they send out a first contact party. Now already there's a story with a first contact, but the first contact is with a world very similar to ours. And the point of that world is to reveal, contrast the superiority paradigm culture with the agglomeration culture, and specifically the new nobility culture. But there will be other first contacts with the alien planets, where these are alien cultures of various different types, and to explore those feasibility, and how the new nobility would adapt to that, and how they would integrate it, and how they would take it as appropriate, and how they would deal with it and exercise capital diplomacy. Lots of application and exploring new cultures, because essentially that's just a macroscopic view of what happens in the microcosm. What I'm saying is, when I interact with Bina, when I interact with Joseph, when I interact with Norma, with Justin, you're all aliens. I'm alien to you. When we start to realize that each individual is a completely alien internal culture, then we start to truly hear, capital H, hear. We assume there are similarities. Those similarities are only externally on the surface. When you really get into it, people are radically, radically, radically different to us. Astonishingly so. Things we take for granted and assume are so in others are simply assumed because we never actually check, right? But the new nobility make that effort to check, and we realize, boy, oh boy, oh boy, are there magical differences. Comes into this chapter. Yes, the joy of sharing. It's predicated on the concept of capital D, difference, the joy of difference. Now, for the new nobility, they don't just tolerate difference or accept difference or acknowledge difference. No, that's what you'd expect. But no, they go to the ultimate. They celebrate difference. Celebrate difference. You can look up hashtag celebrate difference. I've written many articles on it, and it's a big part of the story. The celebration of difference. That and that alone is a cultural shift. And when we apply this to interacting with people, boy, 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 we have magic, right? So for me, I don't see difference as something that I have to work around or accommodate or alleviate or whatever. No, it's about something that I celebrate. I search difference because it's magical, it's joyful, it's awesome. And of course, for the new nobility, each other is merely a variation of themselves. So that difference is only something that is an exploration of your moreness. It's not really a true difference, because it's the difference of the world. If you think of all the differences that exist within the concept of world, wow, now that's what makes world wonderful and exciting, because it contains all of that. When we see others as variations of ourselves, because we're all one essentially, but we're also individual, right? Now we see a difference as a magical, incredible, wonderful thing. Yeah, very, very cool. Very, very exciting. Right, Bina? But I do like this idea, at least from the abstract, Joseph. It's already in the story. That type of alternative culture and nature culture. The new nobility, you could say, are an amalgamation of elf culture, fairy culture, because they have lots of magic in their lives, right? And also human culture. It's a blend of all of them, and moreness because of nobility too. Yes, nobility is not specifically in fey culture or elf culture. In when you go way back into it, it's not a specific focus. Yeah. Nobility, sadly, in mythology and in stories, is never in its pure sense there. It's always in the corrupted sense of hereditary nobility, bloodlines and privilege and status, and the complete corruption of the concept of nobility, and taking it and subverting it into its very opposite, right? Manipulation, abuse, domination, under the skies of nobility. And it's horrible. I mean, it's a grand manipulation. It's really terrible. Yeah. Yeah. Janet says, so wonderful. Difference is an exploration of our moreness. Exactly. Exactly. And celebration in that
Yes.
exploration. We celebrate. So when, yay, Bean is different to me. Janet is different to me. It's not something I struggle against. I was like, yay, I want to hear your difference. You have completely different ideas, understandings, perspectives, attitudes, beliefs. Wow, fantastic. I learn, I grow. I see the moreness of me through your difference, because you are me.
Yes.
You are me. Yeah. Joseph says, you always have the pathology of less developed stages of growth. For example, the patriarchy of Pakistan or Afghanistan. If they aren't represented in part, is it realistic? Exactly. And this is coming. All right. Now we'll have a long discussion on patriarchy, right? And particularly in places like Pakistan. Bina will give you a long story on this, where you might be surprised, right? You'll get a whole different perspective, which is quite marvelous. But I understand your point. Yes. And this patriarchy, I refer to it, in its broader application in the superiority paradigm, which is dominance and hierarchy, and that has, for the most part, in our cultures, manifested as patriarchy. Not all places. The Berber culture, for instance, right, in the Sahara, this is a matriarchal culture. And it's very seldom known, right? It's a Bedouin culture, sub-Bedouin, but it's the Berbers. Anyway, they're their own thing, right? But they never went the way of the other Bedouins, which went into the Arabic culture, which of course later was also um, um, Muslim culture. Now, Muslim culture is not necessarily, or it's not inherently patriarchal. It's not meant to be. It's been subverted by patriarchal cultures that are specific, like, for instance, to Arabic culture, but it's not inherent in actual Muslim culture, not necessarily so. But anyway, that's a long story. We can get into it a little bit, but it's fun. But anyway, my point is that, yes, Joseph, the realism of this culture is that on Nobelia, it's an exception to the agglomeration. In the agglomeration, yes, there are still pockets of superiority paradigm, and there are some planets which, like on Camilius's world, where hierarchy is a really, really big deal. Yeah. And it's this very nature of hierarchy, and particularly patriarchy, which of course is just one variation or one implementation of hierarchy, where it comes and absolutely bites Camillus. He is an exemplification of it. And that's why he's there, because of this point. I wanted to show contrast, to say that, hey, to have this realism that it does exist. Now, the Nobelia, they are an exception, and they are, to some, ideologically unrealistic, because they cannot imagine an alternative paradigm to the superiority paradigm. And this is one of the reasons for the sharing. It's not about the story, but it is to show and demonstrate and share that an alternative paradigm is possible. Our very sharing, our very interaction, the reasons why we hear is alternative paradigm reasons. I'm not here for followers and likes, and people don't even have to be here. They don't even have to be people with comments. We've had many lives where it's just Bina and myself, some just me. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Because in the alternative paradigm, there are many, many, many wonderful reasons for doing so. That whole sharing paradigm. So the new nobility and Nobelia is about an exemplification of this alternative paradigm and to show it in as feasible and realistic a way as possible, and to unhook from this idea that we have to have hierarchy and patriarchy, etc. No, we don't, or matriarchy or any kind of hierarchy. We don't have to have it. Yeah, yeah. So there is a realism to this, absolutely. That's why I wanted to show it, Joseph, in the story form, to absolutely demonstrate this realism, right, of the new nobility. And you see it in Biella and how she interacts. I know for me, Biella is very real, and I aspire to be Biella, absolutely. But I still feel that this is a realistic possibility, maybe far from me. Yes, feasible is a better word maybe than realistic, right? Is Nobelia feasible? It is feasible if we can unhook from the superiority paradigm. If you immerse in an alternative paradigm, then it becomes feasible. And this I know because in my daily interactions, I'm on Zoom daily, right? Bina comes on Zoom, some others sometimes come. In the Zoom culture that I've created, this is alternative paradigm culture. Am I right, Bina? And we practice this every day. Or maybe Bina's not there. Yeah. So we do practice this.
I'm
I
here.
mean,
I'm here. I'm
yeah,
just,
yeah.
I just keep mute myself because I was listening and I was paying
No
attention.
problem.
Exactly as you are saying. Exactly. Yes.
Right. There's a freedom. Anybody can come. Your opinions. There's no such thing as agreement or disagreement. We don't care about agreeing and disagreeing. We care about understanding. So if you come with an alternative perspective, I make every effort to get to understand it. Yes, we have old habits maybe that come into it, but we practice undoing those habits, not giving
Yes.
them strength. And this is a profound difference. So we have this incredible magicness in our interactions because it's in the sphere of these alternative paradigms. And alternative paradigms, yes, habit, this is way of impeccability. It's this core theme that runs all the way through it. Undoing habit and the habit of thinking according to the superiority paradigm, because it's a paradigm. And we assume a paradigm, this is what makes a paradigm, is that it's comprehensive. Every single aspect is affected by it, but it's still a paradigm. We forget that, yes, a paradigm is our totality, but a paradigm means there can be an alternative totality. It seems like a contradiction in terms, but this is the point of an alternative paradigm. There's an alternative totality. It's like saying the universe is everything, but there's multiple universes. It's a contradiction in terms, yes? But this is the point of alternative paradigms. Everything is different. Everything is different. Everything is different. Nobelia is this implementation and application of such an alternative paradigm. And I wanted to show it to be realistic in everything, because in this bench point, you're seeing a psychology that's doing things that they don't need to do, but they do it anyway, right? Well, I guess maybe they could say they need to do it, but they go that extra mile because they think differently. There's no amount of effort that's too much for them, because they don't think in the terms of effort reward. I've got to get something out of it. There's no cost factor involved, stuff like that. Right? Different paradigm. Yes, Norma. It definitely depends on how we define realistic. But that's why I say I like feasible and plausible. Is Nobelia, Biella specifically, and the whole culture, is it feasible and plausible? I really feel it is. Now, of course, as a dependent on the the components, the people that make up this character, or the sentient beings. It doesn't have to be people, it can be any sentient being. And the new nobility use the sentient beings. They don't call themselves human, they call themselves sentient beings. And there's even the rules of sentience which come up, right, as a core baseline for implementing alternative paradigms and having it go cross-cultural. But this key point, though, is that we can be different, and there is a plausibility and a feasibility to it. Now, of course, like I said, Nobelia is they've had a couple of centuries within which for the people to practice and develop and make a habit, and the culture feeds on itself. When we try to implement Nobelia culture here on earth within the superiority paradigm, we find that, of course, we have the habits of a lifetime of growing up in the superiority paradigm, which come back at us, right? We want to agree, for instance, and disagree. This is just a habit that we picked up, right, inadvertently. We have to make an effort
Yes.
deliberately to change that habit. Right? Many things to work on,
And
in other words.
it is very difficult, by the way.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
one can assume that, okay, I'm not into this. I can say about myself. I was assuming that, okay, I'm not into this. But disagreements are still uncomfortable, very uncomfortable
Yeah.
for me, especially with people who interacting on regular basis, or my family,
Exactly.
or my loved ones, or my friends. Disagreements still are
Yes.
very uncomfortable, and because it
Yes.
questions
Yes.
my whole ability, my entire ability of communicating things. That is the
Yes.
question. Like, okay, yes, am I not
Yes.
communicating it properly, right, appropriately? No. Okay, why
Yeah.
they are not
Yeah.
understanding my thing? Okay, or they are,
Yeah.
why they are
Yeah.
struggling to understand. And this is uncomfortable for me, and still
Yes.
I feel that, okay, yes, we need to work more on that. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, okay, I do carry that the
Yeah.
baggage of, like, oh, we disagree. No, for me,
Uh,
it's just in this matter
yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
disagree
Yeah.
on something, I can say that, okay, yeah, okay, we disagree, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it will not going to affect my whole interaction with them. This is something very innate to me. If
Very
I
much.
am, if I'm having a problem on certain topic, that topic, until it will resolve, will be a topic and the argument and everything there. But other than that, no, never,
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
in the slightest change,
Yeah.
because I always take people as a totality, that, okay, yes, how can I just pick one thing and negate
Exactly.
the whole 99%? No, I cannot
Exactly.
do this. But
Exactly.
yes, the disagreements
Exactly.
is still not comfortable for me.
Exactly.
I need to work, and I'm working on it.
Yes. Practice. Practice. Again, we have a whole lifetime. We are looking to, do what has happened on Nobelia over the course of centuries. Right? It's a culture. We are looking to do this in a lifetime. That requires very serious, dedicated effort. And that's why I said we aspire to be aspirants. we realize the enormity of the task involved. But I want to touch on a point of this realism point, and it's in Joseph's most recent comment. Joseph, realism is absolutely critically important to me. Yes, I define myself, if I have to define myself, as a realist. But if we are going to be real, I want real, capital R, real in the absolute extreme. It is real that we can have a variation, a difference, a complete alternative to the paradigm. Now, this this story, right, all about nobility, and it's part of a section in the Moreness project. In the section is the story. There's also another section on capital diplomacy and a few other things, right? And all under this larger section of nobleness, nobility, being noble. The story is one part of that section. Now, that's a section of the Moreness project. And it's got many sections, but two other major sections is capital H, hearing, and the whole course on hearing and helping, and particularly pursuing hearing, which is perception switching off, and how it's connected to helping, not assuming, not presuming, etc., unhooking from this default that we think we need to help, and yet we cause trouble with our helping, etc. Right? So it's very nuanced and very sophisticated, and it's a huge program. Right? It's a huge section of the Moreness project. So that's one section. So you've got the nobleness section, which you can say is the ideal. You've got the hearing section, which is detailed application of being, right? Practical implementation. Then there's another section on the psychology of the superiority paradigm. This is going into the ugly side of it, right? So we've got the extreme positivity on the one hand, and then we go to the extreme negativity necessarily, but it's about learning to understand the superiority paradigm, the psychology of the superiority paradigm. Because if you don't understand it, you can't deal with it. And this is core to an aspirant's training. Capital H hearing is absolutely core because so much comes from that, right? And you know, with the repeat backs and takeaways, perspective shifting, taking things to the end, and of course there's the core program, which is Way of Impeccability. But Way of Impeccability without capital H hearing and without understanding the psychology of the superiority paradigm, you're going to have trouble, right? You have to be real. So the whole part of this, and it's again part of the big Moreness project, these are components that are there that add to the realism, right? And it's not in the story necessarily. We're going to touch on it, yes, through Camelius's breakdown. We get to connect to the superiority paradigm as a contrast, but we're not. There's elements where awareness and understanding of superiority paradigm are shared, but we're not going into the depth of it that will happen when you go into the section of the psychology of superiority. This goes into all the details, you know, like obfuscation and preposterousness and all of this stuff, right? And the narcissism involved and the hierarchy and everything. In other words, each new noble, because as an aspirant, this is part of their training, is to go and understand this. They are absolute experts on the superiority paradigm, even though they don't do anything in their culture. The entire paradigm that they are in is an alternative to the superiority paradigm. But you need to understand it because nature is inherently based around the superiority paradigm. And if you're not careful, like you say in your comment there, that subcultures like Trumpism as a pathology can develop, like a virus that can spread. So if you don't understand viruses, you can't deal with them, right? And when you understand cultural viruses, psychological viruses, emotional viruses, mood viruses, then you start to know how you can be on guard for them, part of your awareness. And it's the realism of the new nobility. They're not an idealistic bubble culture. Absolutely not. That's what I was saying to you about elves. That if they come in via aliens that have that type of culture, those are bubble cultures. That's the problem with them. Where the new nobility are absolutely not a bubble culture. Now, it's a point I didn't mention, but it's in the story. This is this whole story really needs to be, you know, undertaken as its whole. Yes, we can get much value of attaching to a part, but the whole is very important because Nobelia is the home of the new nobles. Yet 90% of the new nobles do not live the majority of their lives on Nobelia. They live out in the agglomeration. They live out in the real world. Yeah. You could say Nobelia is not the real world. It's not. It's an exception to the rule. But the agglomeration which they helped set up, or at least they were key to setting it up. They set it up, you could say. Or not could say, they did, right? Because they understand that Nobelia is only for certain individuals. It's like those on Camelius's world who want to follow academics, or on sports worlds or general commerce worlds or whatever, right? The agglomeration is designed as a way of being, as a political system of interaction, where the individual can pursue their passion, what they really want to maximize the pursuit of individual passion. Yes, whether you want to do this in collaboration with others or not doesn't matter. Either way, you have maximum opportunity to do this, and it is very much taken into account that the possibilities of superiority and the superiority paradigm can come into being. So there are many checks and balances to make sure that those pathologies, those viruses, don't grow and run rampant and take over. Absolutely, absolutely. But again, too, when you start to shift from a paradigm, it makes it difficult for those things to do. Trumpism can only really flourish in a greater culture, like a virus. You need to have the greater environment needs to be benign to the virus, right? If you have a culture that doesn't feed that virus, the virus dies. It can't flourish, right? So Trumpism is in a superiority paradigm culture, and therefore it feeds on it. I mean, just take the winning is everything, right? It's a core element to Trumpism. Winning is everything. When winning becomes everything, where does your morality go? Yeah, it disappears because winning is everything. You do whatever it takes to win. Of course, taken to the extreme, if you're now being thorough, well, there goes your morality. Yeah. So it has to have that culture where that to flourish in. When you have a culture where morality comes first, now winning becomes idiotic. And well, if I'm winning, I'm making others lose. If it's like, hey, no, what's the point of it? You know, if winning is just to be better than, not to be good, better than is relative. When you understand relativity, and relative moreness means nothing, right? I mean, if I beat a young child in whatever game I'm playing, and I've seen people do this, they play games with little children so they can win. You know, it's like somebody getting all excited. My one employee, I've told the story many times. He was so excited. I won, I won, I won. We thought he won the lottery or something. No, he won an auction on eBay. But because to him, winning was everything. I said, you mean you just paid the most? Or overpaid the most, I said, actually. He didn't like what I said, but he just threw it out. He absolutely suppressed it, threw it away. Yeah, but I won. Couldn't see the value of this, you know, or the non-value. So this is a very, very important understanding. There's very much, very, very real stuff underneath the story. The bigger context of the story absolutely takes into account things like hierarchy and safeguards against them. Very, very important. Very, very important. The pathology of hierarchy. Yes. Very powerful comment there. Thank you, Joseph. Norma says, will they eventually lose their feeling of superiority? They don't have a feeling of superiority. Absolutely. They don't have it now. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is why Ursula could fit in, because on Ursula's world, she played the hierarchy game and she played it very well. But she only did it because, well, that's sort of the thing to do, and she wanted the most. She didn't know there was a more than the most of what she thought there was. Right? But for the new nobility is absolutely no feeling of superiority. If you got that impression, Norma, then that's an assumption impression, not an actual impression, right? That's old nobility has that superiority, not new. Keep in mind, they're the new nobility, and they will always emphasize new. You never will hear them call themselves, we are the nobility. No, we're the new nobility, because of this historical assumption and connection to the old nobility, which was all about hierarchy and superiority. No, if you watch Biella, you never will get the feeling of superiority from Biella. Never, ever, ever. I mean, she's actually a bit overly modest and overly humble. Yeah. And she takes that humility and modesty a bit to excess, and it causes a little bit of problems sometimes. So absolutely, Norma, they have already lost this. It's part of their culture. There's no superiority. They celebrate difference. There's no superiority. They are acutely aware of the foolishness and the square circleness of superiority. It doesn't really get you anywhere. It's all relative. It's not absolute. They want absolute value, not relative value, right? Uh, yeah, it's a huge deal. You know, in the superiority paradigm, in the psychology of superiority paradigm, I'm sorry, Bina, but I have to say this is very important. In that course, in that program, in that book, it's called shit pile logic. Because the superiority paradigm says, you know, they're happy, hey, I'm king of the shit pile. Yeah, but dude, you're living in a shit pile. Yeah, but I'm king. I'm king of the shit pile. Yeah, but you're living in a shit pile. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm king of the. They don't get it. They don't get it, right? This is the flaw of hierarchy. Look at a dictator, a typical dictator. Look at Kim Jong-un from North Korea, right? Isn't he king of the shit pile over there? All right, maybe good for the king, but not necessarily. He always has to watch his back for assassinations and whatever. It's a horrible way to live. But this idea that I'm the top of the being, it so consumes, it's so corruptive that those that pursue it are willing to put up with horrible living conditions. Why? Well, this is super whatever. It's a horrible virus. It's a terribly distorted virus, and like viruses will corrupt the host for their own ends, not realizing how foolish it is. Yeah. I mean, a virus makes you sick and you can die from the virus. How does that help the virus? See? It's foolishness in the grand sense. So yes, they are very, very, very acutely aware of the problems of superiority and hierarchy. And they make every effort to not only implement the alternative system, but to constantly be on guard with it. Yes. And this is very powerful to break the habit of hierarchy thinking. Yeah. Right, Bina? Pleasure, Norma. Pleasure, Norma. Pleasure, Norma. It's a very, very big deal. Very
Yes.
big deal. Yeah. So just
Yeah.
to touch on Joseph's point, Joseph, for me personally, realism is everything. Look at Way of Impeccability. It's not a theoretical construct, because the core of it is one thing that's repeated over and over and over, and you probably heard me say it dozens of times. Without application, capital A application, it's all meaningless. This is intrinsic to the new nobility. The whole story is application. We see Biella applying all of her skills, her psychology, her philosophies, her understandings, applying it, applying it, applying it. Look what she's doing with Camellias. She's having a grand gesture. Application, application, timing, pause, right? Pacing, right? Persistence, perseverance, all those P's that have come up so often. Jessica's made some posts about this, right? All those P concepts. She's applying them. She's applying them there. Capital H, hearing. Absolutely. We're going to see her do this most exquisitely. Sharing, capital S, sharing. We see her do this. Application, application, application. And she's going to very much deal with hierarchy. You'll see. You'll see how it comes in. Now, very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. I love it. I love it. Where did Justin go? Come on, Justin. I want to hear some more comments. Maybe he had to go. He couldn't stay. Sometimes people can't stay long. But Justin, if you watch the replay, I'm very keen to hear your comments. I'm always keen to hear a greater range, right? Celebration of difference. So we're keen to hear. We're keen to hear. And look at what Norma and Joseph and Janet, they're sharing, right? All different, different, different. But man, how joyful, how magical, how awesome, right, Bina? Bina, where'd you go?
I was talking and I was on mute. Seriously. Okay. I was just saying that, yes, absolutely. And every single time when someone share, it gives another dimension to, it gives another
Exactly.
perspective
Exactly.
to what we are
Another
sharing.
facet
And
to
it
the
is
diamond.
always every perspective comes with, yes, another value, another way of value. And then this is how we are learning. This is how, at least I'm saying about myself, this is how I learn. This is how I grow.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why sharing, capital S sharing, is so valuable and huge for me.
Yes. Yes.
And the whole concept of
Yes.
sharing and Way
Yeah.
of Impeccability and the Moreness project,
Yes.
it is something. Yes, even sometimes we laugh about it, because when Sil shared first time, I was like, okay, yes, okay, good, yes, good to listen, good to hear that, but okay, okay, because this is not we are accustomed to, at least in my personal understanding. That was so beautiful, and I was trying
Mm,
to live that. But also, I'm not oblivious to what is happening around us,
mm,
and
mm,
I was not seeing that in practice.
mm.
And that was something like, okay, yes, people do dream about things, but now I can say that it's not a dream. It's very practical,
Yes.
and it is happening, it is
Exactly.
possible. That's why the
Exactly.
replacement is so huge. Once you
Exactly.
actually see things in implementation, really
Yes.
practicing that, then of
Yes.
course it changes everything. It changes
Yes.
the concept, worldview, my
Yes.
worldview, what
Yes.
actually my worldview was before, and now
Yes.
it's a huge transformation into this.
Yes. 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 Now let me make a nuanced point here. This story is about extreme, right?
Yes.
It's about extremes, because sometimes I've gotten, well, I don't know if it's criticism, but complaint, not quite either, and a perspective that says, yeah, but still, what you represent as an alternative to the superiority paradigm, it's so extreme, it's so difficult to achieve. Yeah, it is. Yes, it is an extreme. This is a story about an extreme. There are many different potential alternatives, right? But it's just my way of being, my penchant, I guess, my mindset. I like to take things to the ultimate, to the end. It's part of thinking things through to the end, right? So I can't say, well, all right, we're going to just do it halfway. That's just not part of the Way of Impeccability, right? However, This extreme is not an extreme that's there for, it's not by implication, and it's very clearly stated. This is not for everybody. It's only this extreme if this is your passion and desire, is moreness, learning, growth, right? That's why the agglomeration is there as a contrast to the new nobility, right? I mean, I could have written the story where the entire galaxy is all Nobelias. No, it's not realistic, right? What's realistic is this is for a particular psychology, a particular passion, where for those people whom learning and growth is not a desire even, it's a need, right? Those are the ones that end up on Nobelia, because it's a culture of that you join. There's no children, you don't, they don't grow up there, you come and you join it, right? So you come from outside, like any of the other cultural planets, which there are some of them, right? It's like the academics planet. They'll have children there, yes, but those children, if they don't want to be part of academics, they go elsewhere, right? Or do something else on the planet. But that's the thing with the agglomeration. It gives you the opportunity to follow whatever your passion is, whatever your desire is, right? And there's, of course, many, many variations to that. But it's very key to understand that Nobelia isn't represented as an ideal for everybody. It is an extreme for those to who this extreme is a need and a necessity to their lives and their psychologies. Yeah? And it's their spirit essentially that pushes them into it. It's a deep innate point. But it is also extreme because when you are pursuing moreness, how can you not take it as far as it can go, right? And moreness is a philosophy. It's a culture that underlies everything. It's a very, very big deal, very deep point, capital M, moreness. So yes, it is extreme. And to some, that extreme might seem unrealistic, but that's another part of the philosophy. Yes. Bina, how often hasn't the impossible come up in our daily interactions? I've mentioned this, and there's been a few examples just recently. But in a grander sense, our interaction, yours and mine, this sharing, this live, when I wrote the story, there were no lives at the time, right? Well, there may have been, but I wasn't aware of it, right? And at least, in
Yes.
when I started on this path as a young man, right? Or as a young,
Yes.
right? This just was not a feasible possibility, and yet here we are. In other words, you and I have deliberately pursued the impossible, right? And we've attained it. Just because we see something as impossible doesn't mean it's unattainable. It's a deep, deep theme of this whole story. The whole point of the gods coming into the story is this concept of the impossible actually being possible. The same with the great gravity engines. Now that's a very technical, physical thing, but conceptually, right? We assume that the gods are mythological and just stories, right? But what if
Yes.
they really are there? Yeah. So this story explores
Mm.
this concept of the impossible becoming possible. It's a deep theme, and that's why the gods are part of the story. And you have to go back to see them. It's hard to explain it. To be a long story to explain their involvement. This story has so many layers and complexity. It joins many different worlds and paradigms all together. So very, very powerful. Lots of the story. But I really want to emphasize this point that I'm making, that yes, it is taking an ideal that man, but that would be so hard to do. That would be so difficult. But we can't be put off by that. Just because it's difficult, just because it's a long path, a long road, doesn't mean it's not attainable. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, when you
Yes.
think of it this way, right? How many people have walked around the world, literally walked the circumference?
Mm.
All right, let's take well, there's a lot of them. I don't know the exact number, but there's quite a few of them. Right? More than one or two, right? There's dozens, if not more.
Yes.
In other words, many have done this. Right. Let's take another impossibility. Right. Say, okay, you look up at the stars in the sky at night. And when we were kids, didn't you say, oh man, I
Yes.
wonder how many stars there will be? And it was like to count the stars it became a synonym for
Yes.
like superabundance, much moreness, that you can't possibly count the number of stars. Really? Do you actually
Yes.
know? Now I know Bina knows this, right? But I'm asking anybody listening.
Yes.
Do you actually know how many stars you can see, right? How many stars are visible in the night sky? You ask the average person, how many stars do you see up in the night sky? They're going to tell you millions, I don't know, whatever, right? Do you know how what the actual number is? Less than 5,000. It's like 4,630 or something. Yeah, less than 5,000. In other words, counting the actual stars that we see is possible. It just seems impossible. You can count up to 5,000, so you can't count all the stars. It's not an impossible job. Perception of possibility is not realism. See, when we get into capital R realism, oh, everything changes. Oh, wait a second, our perception of quantity, we don't seldom see quantity spread out like that. So our brains are unable to grasp it, and it seems like infinity when it's not. Yeah, it's just 4,600. No big deal. We can count that high. See, so what we believe to be impossible is not necessarily impossible. It's a perceptual issue, not an actuality issue. So grand realism, the grand realism of the new nobility, and they say, oh, wait a second. We understand that much of the impossible, the unattainable, is a perceptual issue, not an actual issue, right? And they also understand compound learning. We assume our learning to be linear. It's not. 1 plus 1, we get 2, then we go 3, then we get 4. But what if it's compound, right? Where you get 2 times 2 rather than 2 plus 2, right? You don't, now you suddenly go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. Do that 31 times and you're going to get to 1 billion.
Yes.
When our learning is compound, it's a big deal. And when you look at an exponential curve, right? If you look at my finger here, right? The curve starts and it kind of goes gently up, gently up, gently up, gently up, and then it gets that steep part, yeah? So the first part of that curve is perceived as flat. We're learning, we're growing, and we don't really think we're getting anywhere. But then suddenly it kicks up into that steep part and it all explodes, right? Then you have a shift in paradigm. Very, very powerful. The dream is all about impeccability. Yes, exactly. Will you read Joseph's comment? Can you read it there, please, Bina?
I was trying to, but somehow the messages are not, comments are not ready.
Oh,
Let's go.
okay. The
Yes.
dream is all about impeccability. Looking at it in a balanced way, we will always have a full range of outcomes. Yes, exactly. And this is the point that I was saying earlier about the segments. The Moreness Project, the full name of the Moreness Project is the Way of Impeccability Self-Expansion Moreness Project. So the core, the foundation is Way of Impeccability. From there, you can go into moreness, but you need to have that core first. You need to have those fundamentals first. So yes, absolutely, the dream is about impeccability. Without impeccability, it's all wasted. You're not going anywhere without impeccability. You're wasting your time, right? Have to have that impeccability. Because if you don't know how to marshal your energies and use them effectively and appropriately, well, you're just going to waste all your energies. It's like not knowing how to spend money, right? If you don't know how to spend money, you're never going to accumulate anything because you won't be able to invest your money because you'll just spend it foolishly, right? Which is exactly what people do with energy. If we think of money as energy, which it is, money is a physical representation of the energy required for things, right? That's why scarcity is more expensive, requires more energy, right? Complexity, etc., right? Rarity, all take more energy. Yeah? And so money is a representation of energy. But when we look at the two as in investing money, spending money, and we use this as an analogy for spending energy, we see the necessity for impeccability, right? A fool and his money is soon parted. Yes, old expression. And without impeccability, what are we but fools? Part of Way of Impeccability and the start of this chapter. What was the opening quote? Do you remember, Bina?
No.
More or less?
No, I don't remember.
Wow, it was about
No,
nincompooperi,
I
remember?
cannot say. Yes,
And
yes. I remember
yeah,
the abstract of
yeah,
it,
in the
but not
abstract,
the
right?
words.
So
We
I'll screen share. I'll screen share so
we
we
need
can
to
read
be
this.
aware. We
Right,
need to be
right,
aware of our own.
right, right.
We need
So
to be aware of our own. This is the foundation of awareness.
exactly, exactly, and self-development. Now, Joseph, to answer your point about realism, see, yes, this is an idealistic story, and I think Joseph is very concerned about me and the story being unrealistically idealistic. But Joseph, this is an acute awareness for me. And it is a constant point that I make every effort to not be so. And I really do not want the story, and my intent was not to write a story that's unrealistically idealistic. And look at the quote that starts this chapter, right? The quotes give an ineffable connectivity, an overview of what's going on. And this quote is not about idealism, but about absolute realism. And your point about the pathology of hierarchy and superiority paradigm. And acute awareness of our own nincompoopry is a critical ingredient for self-development. Not just an awareness of our nincompoopry, an acute awareness. Yeah? We have to understand the superiority paradigm if we are to self-develop. The point of this chapter and Cornelius, we are going to see the superiority paradigm come out through him in this and how it leads to his worldview collapse, right? And he is aware of it himself also. It's why he responded to that new nobility take on the myth of Lucifer, right? And they transform it. To them, Lucifer is this massive agent of good because of the hyper-realism of it, right? I mean, there's a lot more to that myth if you were to go into it via the new nobility, where they will tell you, but you know, if you have a concept and a that where this is how could the best and the brightest possibly get corrupted? It's just not possible, right? And that corruption, if it is a true negative, it could not be allowed in a benign universe. Therefore, it has to be good, not necessarily nice, when you understand that difference, which is a key difference, a key understanding, a key awareness to the new nobility, that good is not always nice. It can be if you make an effort to learn and grow. But if you're a little bit reluctant, like when we were kids, you get told nicely, and if you don't listen, then you get a smack. That's it, you know. All right, maybe that's not the way of it today anymore, but it was. But the universe, it doesn't have any restrictions. The universe will smack you if you don't listen. I see it all the time. Yeah, I see it all the time. I made a big study of this when I was a kid, in a very practical way. Realism again, Joseph. Always realism, right? When I grew up, vehicles, cars were very expensive. Yeah, and you know, the idea of getting a car, like getting a car as a present from your parents, as an average sort of, this was just completely like, hello, are you crazy? There's no way I'm going to be given a gift for my 18th birthday by my parents, or 16th, where their driving age was 18. This was just an impossibility beyond comprehension. Anyway, so getting a car was a major expense and out of the reach of most. And as a result, motorcycles were the thing, right? So all the young men, and motorcycles, you could start driving at 16. All the young men were on motorcycles. Of course, what happens, you put young men on motorcycles, you have lots of accidents, right? So I would listen to the story of how they came to have the accident. And I saw some patterns. As, you know, just who I was, I paid attention to such things. So I made a study out of it. I did lots of studies. And in my study, I asked the accidentees, some of them in hospital, you know, the broken leg or whatever, in the cast, you know, the typical like cliche movie thing. I asked them like, what happened, right? And they would tell me the story. And then I said, well, you know, when all right, well, the story is, I came to this corner and I was going too fast, and then the back slid out, and well, all right. I said, what happened just before that? And I would have them go through their internal thinking and psychology. This took a long time, right? I'm so saying it quickly, but I would have them share their thinking. And inevitably, when they went to what happened just before that, they said, yeah, you know, I kind of knew that I was pushing it, but I kept doing it anyway. There was a moment of choice. And they all said, I knew I shouldn't, in the abstract, right? Even sometimes those exact words. I knew I shouldn't, but I kept on going anyway. Their self-importance would not allow them to make that change, because in order to not to do the foolish thing, they would have to basically, you know, kind of in their minds be wimpy, you know, or kind of be cowardly or whatever, right? And be uncool. And they couldn't be uncool. Being cool meant having an accident, so be it. Right? They knew there was a massive risk, but they did it anyway. It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating to see how they ended up having those accidents, because of multiple factors. One, they got the cues from the universe, the alerts, the red flags, and they ignored those red flags. Why did they ignore those red flags? Superiority paradigm, ego, status, etc. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, right? Yeah. I mean, you see it in dating, the same pattern. How many people get into trouble in their dates, right? Now, I grew up in a house full of women. So I had a very acute awareness of this dating, guys, nonsense, trouble, right? How many get into trouble with their dating? Why? Because they see the red flags, but they don't want to seem rude. So they go along with the pressure. Very simple thing. Gets a lot of women into trouble. Like real serious trouble. Why? Because they couldn't say, well, sorry, I want to end the date. I want to go home. They don't want to seem rude or awkward. Yeah. Just on this trivial point of not wanting to appear rude or awkward. No, they go along with it and get into trouble. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, exactly. You've got to call those red flags. You have to call them. Yeah. The dream is all about impeccability, looking at it in a balanced way. We will always have a full range of outcomes. Exactly. And that's very important. At the balanced view, it reminds me of how many New Age people, that Native American culture reminds me. Yeah, they want to appropriate our spirituality, but do not want our poverty and problems. But it's a package deal. Our impeccability pushes us to the best of us, but our impeccability keeps us grounded. Exactly. Exactly, Joseph. Exactly. It's about that balance, being real, being real, being real. Now, being real does not mean that we cannot be idealistic. Right? There's an assumption, but it's a hierarchy assumption that says, but your ideals are all fine and good, but that's not real, right? Ordinary people can't attain this. Why is that myth pushed? Because it makes their indulgence, right? It makes their indulgence one which is now, yeah, but this is what normal people do. And it's an excuse for indulgence. It's an excuse for not making an effort. It's an excuse for being crappy. It's an excuse for being manipulative and abusive, etc. It's a wonderful, wonderful excuse, right? It's too difficult. It's not feasible. It's not possible. Nonsense, 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 right? I mean, take patience. When I grew up, patience was an ideal that was put out there, but and I pursued this. I did a study on patience, right? Most perceived patience to be an unrealistic mindset, attitude, part of being, way of being. They just said, no, but to have true patience is not possible. Really? That whose opinion is this? This comes from BMNs who are trying to sell you on this idea because that way it justifies them being impatient. Yeah. So this point of ideals not being realistic, it's part of the superiority paradigm. It's something that's very specifically pushed out there as a justification. Most of our culture comes from horrible people. I call them BMNs, bullshit manipulator narcissists. Those who are abusive, manipulative, into hierarchy, have no morals, none of this, right? And they're just all about short term for me, all this stuff, right? They're just horrible people. And to justify their horribleness, they make up all these rules, like patience is impossible. Rubbish. Nothing that says we can't acquire and attain patience. Yes? Nothing whatsoever. Yeah. To call red flags, very important. Yes, Joseph. You have to act on them. See, without application, it's all meaningless, particularly when it comes to red flags. That was so fascinating to me with my studies of relationships and these accidents and many things. And I saw that the flags were there, very clear, but people ignored them. It's fascinating to me. Consciously. I knew I shouldn't have, but I did anyway. They all said the same thing. Fascinating. They knew. In the end, so I would ask some of them. I said, "Well, in other words, this was your fault, yeah, yeah," and they couldn't deny it. They weren't happy at that acknowledgement because the story they'd said, "Well, it was an accident and this and that, whatever," was never their fault really. Yeah, but when I had that replay, of course, at some point they have to be aware that, well, it actually was my fault. Now, not all would acknowledge that, they would obfuscate it, they would ignore it, they would throw it aside. Yeah, but, and then they would argue about it, right, to try and justify it because they didn't want to face that awful truth and deal with that awful truth. But some did. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. They acknowledged it reluctantly, but they acknowledged it. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. Bina, anything to wrap up? I love your comments, Joseph. I absolutely love this conversation and dialogue we have on this. It is wonderful. And same with
Yes,
Norma too,
yes, yes,
Norma, you
exactly,
you you always
exactly.
contribute so much. Sometimes you do it in very brief comments, but you do. Same with you, Janet. Yeah. When you share, it's profound. It's profound. It's profound. There are implications to your sharing. Yeah. It's a big deal. Justin, I appreciated your comments immensely as well. I hope to see we more of you. I really do. I enjoyed what you had to say. Yeah. Moreness. Go ahead, Bina. Go ahead, Bina.
No, I was just enjoying the conversation, and of course,
Mm,
comments from Joseph.
yeah.
These are adding more and more.
Yeah.
It is of course,
Yeah.
as Sil was saying in the mentioning in the beginning also, that we are not intending for, but it doesn't mean that we are negating or kind of like minimizing
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
value. Just
No.
so
No.
much
No.
valuable
Wow.
when people
Why?
come and they share. It adds so much to, and
Exactly.
I really enjoyed that because of course because I have been experiencing this. Sil
Mm,
can share. He has such amazing and immense energy when it comes to earnest sharing. And
mm.
when people ask earnest question or they are interested in, then is this energy level is like wow, just
Yes. Yes.
reaching the sky.
Yeah.
And he can go
Yeah.
on and on and on. He don't need anything. He don't need any
Yeah.
support or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
he can.
Yeah.
He can
Yeah.
actually. And
Yeah.
and this topic is almost like an endless topic.
Exactly.
We can
Exactly.
continue. Like
Exactly.
when people ask, it is actually it's an appropriate pause. This power pause when you guys share your understanding,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
awareness. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
only it just add value, but it gives us the opportunity to take a pause and listen, and then of course just appropriately acknowledging the value, let it sink
Mm,
in.
mm,
That's why
mm.
these comments, these questions, these answers, this sharing is so profound.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
for sharing, Sil. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Norma, for being here. Thank you so much, Joseph, for being here. I'm really enjoying your
yes.
comments.
Yes. Me
We'll
too.
see
Me
you
too.
guys tomorrow,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we will go into details. I didn't
Yes.
share much because actually it's a very big point. And today, what
Yeah.
Sil
Yeah.
has shared, I
Yeah.
need time to really think about
To
it, and then of
digest.
course come back. I'm going to. This is how my mind works.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is how my mind works. I always come
Yeah.
back. It is
Yeah.
not going to be like, okay, yes, I forget about it. No, just going to stay, and I will come up maybe
Yeah.
with more questions, or maybe with my perspective. Whatever will
Yeah.
come, I will share openly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much. Thank you
Yeah. Yeah.
ever so much, and
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
everyone for coming here. We will
One,
see
one,
you
one
guys
moment,
tomorrow.
Bina, before we tie it off completely, I want to
Yes.
just elaborate on a point that you are mentioning there, and that when earnestness comes my way, like your comments, well, Norma, Justin, and Joseph, right? The earnest comments. Earnestness for
Yes.
me in particular has a disproportionately magical effect on me, right? When earnestness comes at me
Yeah.
and is earnestness shared, it pulls things from me. It's not like I have a lot to say and I'm just happy to listen to the sound of my own voice. No, the stuff is being pulled from me. It's coming through me, right? Whatever your comments are, there's an appropriateness connectivity to it. So I'm sharing what's appropriate. It's like you, the tip of the iceberg, your comment, your earnest comment, and I'm just sharing the rest of the iceberg. That's what it does to me. It pulls the rest of that iceberg up, right? Has a disproportionate effect on me. So sometimes I'm asked an earnest question,
Yes.
and the response can be sometimes days, weeks, months long, even years. Right? Disproportionate effect. So I caution sometimes, I give a disclaimer, say, be careful of asking me an earnest question. You may get way, way more than you expect, but it doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment too, because of that connectivity. I strive so for connectivity. And when you do have and see the connectivity, well, of course, when you're sharing now, you've got to share the rest of it. It's hard with a story. That's why I share the whole story, because you see the complete connectivity of everything in the entire story. That's why when it's in
Yes.
the guide, you can go back, you can go to the slides, you can get it all. Very powerful stuff. Very, very powerful stuff. This would be a great topic, and we'll do this in the week, Joseph. That Venus, not just how she deals with the patriarchy, but her perspectives on the perception of patriarchy and how it's not quite what we perceive. Yes, it is there, but even within that culture, there are subcultures where it's not an issue. Anyway, we'll get into it in the week. Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get into it. We'll tag you. We'll tag you when it comes up.
Yes.
We'll tag you. Wonderful. On that, I will end, and so I can enjoy my wonderful meal.
Yeah.
I mean, I eat when I'm hungry, but anyway, I like to share. See,
Yes.
toasted cheese with fresh tomato. Yum yum
Yes.
yum.
Oh, thank you so much.
I like sharing. I like
Thank you.
sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And bye
Bye
for
bye.
now.
Bye
Bye for
bye.
now,
Bye bye. Bye
Norma
bye.
and Joseph and Sim. Okay. Bye.
Wonderful. All right. Bye bye, everybody. End meeting for all.